Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby, here with Jess Gonchor, the production designer for A Quiet Place Part 2. And Jess, John Krasinski has said that he's taken inspiration from Westerns quite a bit in terms of developing the visual language of this film. And that's a thing that a genre you have quite a lot of experience with on your resume. So I'm wondering, how did you approach that and incorporate that type of Western sensibility in this movie?
Well, I guess in a sense, it's part two is a landscape movie, and there's the family, traveling, which is something that's quite common in the, in the Westerns. So I think, I just think, just sort of that long drawn out landscape and negative space against sky and steel mills and the farmhouse and train stations and everything, sort of less visually noisy and not any big cities or anything like that. So I think that sort of had a lot to do with with it and sort of like the pace of the whole thing as well, if that makes sense.
What does that do for you as a production designer when you do have big set pieces in this, but there's also those moments you're mentioning where it is out in nature? How does that change the way you have to operate?
Well, I mean, production design is like, you have to sew a whole story together and you have to tell a story visually with the scenery. So you always have to put, A, B, and C together. And whether it's one set that's a house that you shoot the exterior in one place and you build the interior and you shoot the backyard in another place, but it all seems to and wants to live together comfortably. So you sort of have to, approach a movie with landscape and sets interweaving together. It's sort of the same way. You just have to like, okay, what is the look of this movie and how am I going to amortize it through there if I want to or if I don't, and how am I going to make sense of it and how is it going to just sort of live together. So there's a map you sort of have to do. Take the arc of the movie and say it starts out in a house and it burns down and they leave and they need to go find a safe place to go and they find that, and then half the family goes this way and the other half goes that way, and then they so it's like I don't know, you just sort of have to plan it out and really come up with a visual concept or a mantra or a or something that you want to sort of help move the story along, whether it's moving it faster or slowing it down. That's my approach anyway.
Yeah. And John seems like he thought about this story very detail oriented, and specifically what was his input to you? Like, did he come with sort of images that he was thinking of in terms of sets?
Yeah, he did think about it a lot. I think he's familiar. He's from like Pittsburgh. He's from like these steel mine town, and I think he grew up sort of around that. So he maybe had a glimpse of that, or sort of knew about that, and he wanted to make something that felt like it was, even though it was current, it sort of felt like an older movie made in the 80s, not about the 80s, but I mean, everybody wants to make like something that feels like Jaws, which is, I think, my favorite movie. I think John's too. It's not trying to do that again, but just like, I don't know, I had a good color palette, good everybody wants to do that, and I don't think we were any different. But so he had a lot of really great input and a lot of direction, and we sort of collaborated with the whole thing. We ended up shooting it in Buffalo, New York, which is a steel town. Sort of a defunct steel mill, closed down steel mill, where there's not a lot of those left in the country, but we managed to get into one there where we used some of that and built a lot of it. So in Western New York had really just a good look about it for this movie.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed too on your resume, something unique about this movie is that you have this great resume, but not really many sequels on it. And this one is a sequel where you didn't work on the first one. So are there any particular challenges with sort of inheriting a world from that first movie?
Yeah, I mean, just I mean, the first one was amazing. I really loved the movie, and when John had contacted me for the second one, I was like, yeah, it sounds, he's just a great guy, and really great writer and a great director. So, but I had never done a part two, of anything or a sequel of anything. So, really just try to honor what they did in the first one that worked so well. And this one was sort of like, it wasn't like, no, it was a sequel, but the environment was at the very beginning, and then they left it. So I thought that I had a chance to, do some different things on it, and whatever it was, turned out it was like a lot of different environments that they went to. Some, some quite enclosed. So the part two was just really like do it. They all did wonderfully on the first one, and move the second, story along. And it was such a different movie that I mean, the family was the same, the cast was the same, but I think the environments were different, and allowed me to do some different things.
Yeah, I think one of the environments that stands out to me the most is that train car that Millicent's in and encounters the alien creature in, and you get to create a lot of places like that that are sort of destroyed or nature is taking back. When you think about that train car one, like how do you land on a specific look for that?
Well, it was John lives in New York, and I grew up in New York. I live in LA, and there's a very specific train line called Metro North, and I know you're familiar with it.
Indeed.
There's like the Harlem Hudson line, and then the Metro North, and the blue stripe goes to Harlem, and the red stripe goes up to New Rochelle and the Mamaroneck, and through the Bronx and everything. And I don't know that I think both of us had that train in mind, that silver car, that that red stripe going down it, and just seemed like the right, it wasn't an Amtrak, it wasn't a subway car, it seemed like the right thing to do. But those trains are they're weird seating. They're quite unbalanced. They have 3 seats on one and 2, you know what I mean? 2 on the other. So we ended up cutting down a row of seats off the 3, so it was even, and we could get a dolly in there and a crane in there, and it just very sort of symmetrical. But that was one of the more fun. They were all fun, but it was fun to figure out how the creature got in there, and then the energy went out. You know what I mean? So it wasn't going into the thing, but it was like out. And I don't know. So we sort of like, just came up with that. And for a while, it was going to be like at a train station. Well, we decided to put it like somewhere in between train stations in the woods. And again, Buffalo was. I mean, they had we got the trains from a few hundred miles away in Cleveland, but Buffalo had a wonderful train tracks, which are very hard to work on, that we're able to use a private track. And yeah, it turned out, I'm pleased with the way it turned out.
Yeah, it seems like it would be a lot of fun to figure out how things are destroyed like that,
Yeah.
There's on kind of the flip side of that type of set, there's a lot of scenes are shot in this very tiny furnace that's sort of in Cillian Murphy's bunker, which seems like sort of impossible to do to film inside. How do you make a space that's so confined like that works on film?
I mean, it definitely was not easy. I mean, it's one thing to build we started out with a size, and then it kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Like we mocked up some diameters, different diameters, and put the cast in there, and sort of just kept getting smaller and smaller. To John's like, yeah, that's the size. And we're like, oh, okay, great. Well, how in the world are you going to film, in that thing, especially because it's all lit by candles. So you can't get any lights in there, really, and this was actually, I guess we shot the movie almost like 3 years ago. So it was sort of right on the cusp of, because everybody lights everything with LED lights now. And it's almost like it is a piece of tape that it's got such a low profile. So it was around, but it gives out a different sort of a light, a cooler light. So we really lit a lot of it with the candles, and it all had to pull apart in different pieces. So when you shot it, you didn't see if there was a light up there. You know what I mean? So it was definitely a puzzle, and it was hard. It was like because there was no air in there. It had to be lightweight enough for that door to close, but yet be heavy enough to close and latch. So it was like that. It was definitely posed a lot of challenges, but yeah, it was definitely it was a puzzle. It was a hard set piece to shoot because it was so small. The back always wanted to be on it and wanted to be closed when in there. Naturally, light would go when we opened it, but we probably had like 50 wild compartments on there. In other words, the little, picture was like an egg crate or something, and pieces like would come off, so we'd get a light in there, but you wouldn't see that there was an opening in the skin of it too. So it was definitely it was a challenge.
Yeah. Would you say that most of the moments, the sets you had to build here are puzzles like that in a film like this, where a VFX creature has to walk around in it, and there needs to be certain natural light versus, lighting equipment? Is that a constant, source of experimentation with other departments?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, between production design and lighting and the camera department, especially in that radio station that wanted to be like also abandoned and run down, and some lights flickering, some practicals on. So it was a real like one of the movies I've had to collaborate. There's always a collaboration between DP and production designer, but this was like really we had to be simpatico on so much of this because it relied on and we shot it on film too, so it's like you need a lot more light to shoot in film than you do on digital. So you know what I mean, there was no under lighting something and and overexposing it to brighten. It really it was challenging, and the DP Polly, she did a great job.
And you've worked on, this is a more contemporary themes here, but you've also done period work. You have Westerns in there. Do you find yourself sort of drawn to certain genres or designs more than others?
I mean, I mean, it's really the script that, I get, that I like, or I feel that is right for me. I feel like I can, offer something up, like, because like we're saying, like production design, you have to, we have to become experts on something in like 3 months, you know what I mean? And a lot of these things, there's things that I know about, there's things that I don't know about. And, the things that I don't know about, I'd be like, oh, that would be pretty cool to do a crash course on figuring out, what something was like that I didn't know that much about. So, there's that, but period movies are always, they're always great, it's really the script. It's really the script. I haven't really done like a 70s thing yet, which I would love to do. 50s, 60s, way back in time. But yeah, I mean, period pieces are always great.
Yeah, well, in a similar vein, I guess, then talking about other work, you are a frequent collaborator of the Coen brothers. Both your Oscar nominations are from their movies. The past few movies you've done, though, are not with them. Is there a conscious sort of, effort to collaborate with new people? And what does reaching out to like a new director and working with a new director offer you?
I mean, I think you do have to shake it up every now and then. Um, they haven't really done much, in the last few years. But it's just always great to work. I mean, I love to work with different people and and new people, and so yeah, it's always just sort of keeping it fresh, and keeping it, variety of things. And if those guys did something else and they called me, I'm sure I'll be there in 2 seconds. But so yeah, that's just it's good to keep up a variety, and it's good to work with different people, and because otherwise you're just coming up with the same ideas again, the same thing. It's like, it's like right now I've been working on the job I'm on for a really long time, and people are asking me about the next thing you want to do this, and like I need some time off, because I have to learn some new things. Like I'm out of ideas at this time. You know what I mean? It's sort of like live a little bit more life, and so it's the same thing with like different directors, and you're working with people, and then you work with somebody else, and this is, what I mean. So it's everybody works differently, and it's fascinating the way everybody works, and everybody has a different team. So if you go from John from Krasinski and his team, or Coen Brothers and their team, or Bennett Miller and his team, or whatever it is, you not only get a different director to work with, you get a different bunch of people, which is also cool.
Yeah, very much so. Well, the variety served you very well on this movie, because it was a great job on A Quiet Place Part 2. So thank you so much for sitting here and discussing it with me. If you're watching out there, subscribe to Gold Derby. Keep up to date with all of our videos throughout the season. And thank you so much again for joining me.